Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur. Tonight I'm joined by my lovely wife, Megan.
Hello.
Because we just finished rereading The Historian together. Now, we every year read a book like together as a couple, and I mean it's a practice we maintain even since we were dating, right?
Yes. So even through dating, through a wedding, through having kids, we still try to connect and read a book together every year. Reading is how we first connected in our relationship. So I think it's great that we've managed to carry that through even all these years later. So yes, this is one of our yearly reads together, The Historian.
And it's the first time it's a reread together.
Yeah.
So what was it about The Historian? 'Cause, I mean, we both enjoyed it when we were dating. This was about a year into our relationship, if I remember right.
That sounds about right, yeah.
So what was it about The Historian that made you want to come back to it and reread it? Because it's a long book. Like it's a time investment. It's not 180 pages.
So I think the biggest reason why I wanted to reread it, especially this year, is that it was a way to travel when we can't travel.
Amen.
Yeah. I think that's what makes this such a good reread, is that I think it's really more about the journey than where it ends. And so it's a way to sort of travel to France and Eastern Europe and all these, amazing places from your home. And so I think that's what made me want to reread it this year, is the fact of I can't travel, so here's a way I can travel, while at home and explore some new places.
Yeah, I agree. I think the sense of place, the setting is so well described. Like we get a sense of, and I love all the eating scenes. Like I think that makes a good travel book, right? It's the
100%.
I mean, we enjoy like trying new recipes, and the crab in Venice remains like the touchstone.
True.
Crab
yes,
pasta.
very much.
But I think that creates a different sense of place, a different sense of feeling of authenticity. The scenes where they're in, I think, Bulgaria towards the end, and Paul and Helen experience like the walking on the fire and like the different drinks and foods that he's like, oh, I don't want to try this, but I force it down.
And I think that's what's one of the fun parts of it is, when you travel, especially to really sort of far-flung places like Eastern Europe, you want to try everything, and you can definitely get a feel for a culture through its food, right? It tells you, are they on the sea? Are they, are they inland? Do they, raise animals? What kind of vegetables that they have, right? So when you try food, I think that really gives you a huge sense of the people and the culture and, what resources that they have. So I enjoy the eating scenes too. To the point where a lot of times I'm like, I have to look up what is this dish that they're talking about.
Yes.
And it makes you really want to try it.
It's like, could I cook this?
Yeah.
It won't taste as good as it does in the book.
Probably not, right? But it's intriguing. And, even though we've never been to Istanbul, where I think we're familiar enough with a lot of spices and and things where we can kind of imagine a little bit of what this might taste like, and it's easy to imagine being in Budapest and enjoying a meal and so I think for me really this year this book has kind of fulfilled a little wanderlust and a little travel lust that I have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that was something I was enjoying as I was reading it. Weird quick food tangent, because I've been saving this one. I didn't share it until the video. Before we move on to talk about the libraries, which is the other part that we enjoy. If you've ever read Dracula, it starts out, and I want to say it's the very first entry by Jonathan Harker, which is in an epistolary form like The Historian, that Harker's talking about visiting Hungary or Transylvania or something. He keeps talking about like, oh, they have this great spice they put on everything. It's called paprika, and oh my gosh, it's like so intense. And you're like well,
I'm pretty sure we use paprika like every day.
We run through it.
We really do. That's funny.
So that was a fun detail to share. But
I enjoy that.
So another thing I really enjoy about it is the descriptions of all the really cool libraries. And as we said, we share reading as like that was one of our passions before we became a passion for each other. So which of the libraries would you most want to go visit?
Well, I think the easiest answer is Draculas Library. Is that giving? I hope that's not giving away too much of the book. Okay. I mean, of all those libraries, he's spent centuries living and collecting works. Are you surprised by this?
I'm shocked, but continue, please.
Even though it is deep underground and seems very creepy, and you know how I feel about being underground. But there's works there that probably people don't even know exist or have been lost or forgotten. At least with the libraries everywhere else, right? Those are places that you can visit, and you can go tour Oxford's library.
Sure.
But I want to know, what does Dracula have? And not only that, but he has materials and books or whatever from the 1400s to more modern stuff. Right. It sounds like as well. So I'm curious. So I think it's also because it's probably very specific and like singular in terms of taste, right? Like, what does Dracula like to read?
Right.
In his spare time. I don't know.
Comic books? I don't know.
Yeah, so what would you pick?
Well, if we're going to Dracula's Library, I mean, thank goodness we both speak Greek, right?
Right, oh yeah, yes. Very well, actually.
Neither of us speak Greek.
No.
So I'm shocked by that, mostly because of the location. Like, I'd be soiling my pants if I was standing there in Dracula's Library. But I also know that I'm like a book addict, and so I would also be stacking my arm, ready to run at any point. But like, wait, just one more shelf.
Right.
Like, scanning. So I'm an ardent book shopper. I've shopped books with one of the girls like in my arm.
Yes.
Moved fast. I could move fast.
You can move fast.
I was just legitimately shocked. Like, I couldn't imagine. Yeah, to me, I'm thinking like the Duomo or something when you say Dracula's Library, in terms of like dank, scary, claustrophobic.
Lord. That's a whole other show. We can talk about that another time. But it's also that's like very much like once in a lifetime, right? Like, it's very easy to imagine. It's much easier to imagine going to Oxford, right? But if I truly, what would I want to visit? I want to go see Dracula's Library. Okay. Now, if someone said, "Hey, we found it underground. Do you want to go?" I might hesitate. But in my heart, in my head, I'm like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Right. So I can't even...
If we were there together, I think it's a different experience.
Yeah, it's a very different experience.
I'll still tease you, but...
So what would be your other choice besides Dracula's Library?
So I was thinking... I mean, I love that choice. Yeah. I was thinking the library in Istanbul, how they have the like little libraries that have gradually moved. But one of the things I enjoy, and it's one of those weird, like, bookish type things, is where they discover the primary sources, the letters or the draft of a letter that characters, later find a copy of or something, and it's between two pages that have been glued together. It's between the binding and like it's in there and it's hidden, and they discover it. And that sense of discovery, I always get a thrill when I see that. It's part of what is fun about cleaning out a house as somebody's moving, is you discover like the old pictures or something. And so that sense of discovery, that sense of something that no one has laid eyes on for decades or centuries in this case, is always really exciting. It's something I love in like Possession and other books like that, where there's that sense of discovery. And because that happens in the library in Istanbul with like the Boras and Selim Askoy and stuff, that's probably the one. And I would also be in Istanbul, so I'd be trying to check out the Hagia Sophia.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, right. I mean, there'd be so many things to check out there, and I think what you said is a great point. Like, one of our other favorite books is A Shadow of the Wind, right? And it's very similar. There's a lot of discovery and finding of documents and then tracing this mystery, and I think that's something that's kind of being lost. We made when we were reading the book, we made a comment of how actually being able to do research is becoming a lost art. Right. It's very easy when you have a phone at your fingertips or Google or whatever to just look things up. But I think I agree with you that I think one thing being lost is understanding primary sources. Right. It's very easy to look up something on Wikipedia. It's another thing to go into some dank university library somewhere looking for the actual physical document and actual proof that this existed. And then the connections that they make from those documents. There's a few moments that seem a little far-fetched and a bit of a stretch, and I think the author actually, she does a good job at kind of calling some of those things out. I think she knows that she's going to be like, wait, how did they get here, right? But then they go, now wait, we don't really have a lot of evidence for this,
Sure.
Do you really think, and then they find other ways to back it up.
Right.
And that's research, that, you can go and get a letter from, I don't know, Napoleon, I don't know why that comes to mind, right? And you want to make, some type of claim about it, but you have to have some other things to back it up. And that means going and researching, okay, what else is going on, in France, during Napoleon's, reign and conquest and everything, so you have to be able to back up your claims as well. And I actually think that's something that's attempted in a fictional novel about, Dracula, that she does really well. It feels real in its own way. You could imagine tracing these documents and sort of in a way becoming convinced that Dracula's alive, right? And I think that's really fun and interesting. Sure. What kind of draws you in is you kind of want to go on this adventure too. Yeah. At least I do, and how I feel about certain things, and yet, I might be willing to climb up to the mountain monastery. I don't know about the camping out at night and the wolves and the strange cult happenings, but I might be willing to give it a try. So
Order of the Dragon.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I got that on speed dial. So I probably my last question is, one of the key features of the book is that various characters at times mysteriously receive a book, often in an older binding, that is all the pages are empty, except for that one noticeable incident where like the name is in there.
Yes.
That becomes extra charming, but it's always empty, and then it has the like horrifying dragon, a woodcut in there. So if you're thinking, one of these mysteriously appears for you, what kind of binding would you like it to be in? I'm not going to give you this for Mother's Day or anything, don't worry.
Oh, okay, no worries. What kind of binding? Like, what kind of format?
Do you have a color? Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Cloth, leather?
I feel like no matter how I got it, it would be slightly terrifying. I don't know how, maybe something smaller, so as I'm on my journey to figure this out, I can easily carry it around. Some of them seem like they're pretty large.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I'd care for that.
Okay.
I didn't really think much about the binding. I think that's another thing that's really interesting is they do pay a lot of attention to the binding, right? Because that tells you where it's from and how it was made and things like that. And I'll admit I don't pay that much attention to binding. I'd probably just be pretty freaked out with the dragon woodcut in the middle. So maybe I care more about, is it portable? How portable is it?
How portable?
I'm practical.
You're very functional. I'm the one who takes like a chisel and like repairs used books that we find that we want the contents, but the binding is, a disaster.
Yes.
I would want mine to be like in a dark green stained leather or something. Because my favorite color.
Fair enough.
Please don't bring me this for Father's Day.
No worries. I don't know how I would create that.
So, in terms of like the actual characters, one thing that I think is interesting is it seems to be in the voice of a character, and it's really about her parents. But within that, so much of it is this epistolary format where it's from her father's point of view. And then we periodically get these like other letters and documents, which I like the mix-up. That's something, I'm a sucker for that.
Okay.
For the different voices, especially if they sound different. Your thoughts on Paul? Are you going on this adventure with Paul? I know the answer to this question, but please, your thoughts on Paul. Please amplify your response.
Oh, God. Megan. Well, you know how I feel about Paul.
Tall McCartney, right? Yeah, no.
Sometimes I feel he's a little emotional. Now, maybe that says something about me. And it sounds terrible. It sounds like a criticism. But I think he's really meant to be a balance. So I think him and Helen are meant to be a balance. and there's kind of a reversal in what you expect. Helen is not super emotional. She's a little bit tougher. She carries a gun. She knows how to use it, versus Paul, who's very academic and,
he's a diplomat.
He
becomes a diplomat.
Yeah, he becomes a diplomat. So I think it's very, very purposeful. Will I still go on the adventure with Paul? Sure, because it's fun, right? You get to see all these really cool places and do all these good things. I think there'd be moments of frustration, but again, like, I think sometimes even Helen gets a little frustrated with him, so maybe I can be the Helen to his, to his Paul. But yeah, I would go, for sure. What about you? Would you go?
With Paul or with Helen?
Either.
Barley.
Barley.
Just make sure Master James knows where I'm
going.
Right. So as you discussed that, one thing I love about the book, and it's something that I appreciated the first time we read it, and I really appreciated it kind of on a closer rereading, was, because the first time you kind of read it for plot, and the second time you're reading it for the characterization, the setting, all those other fun pieces. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I really enjoy is the specific ways in which, as you said, there's this reversal. Like, Paul, within the plot, is going out to find and rescue Helen, and yet repeatedly, Helen is the one who is like steely and determined and taken care of. Through the end, like, Helen is the one who is braver, is more resourceful, in like hand-to-hand combat with supernatural creatures. And I love that. I love that aspect, that it is not, this frail woman who is losing her head and is constantly turning to Paul, like, what do you think we should do? Like, she's smarter than Paul.
Yeah.
She's a better academic. She's a better researcher. It's clear that she is smarter than Paul. She is tougher than Paul. Like, she's a better fighter than Paul. Yeah. And so that is fantastic to have in a novel. But you're not beat over the head with it. It's just these subtle pieces of, like, oh, Helen's the one who carries a gun, and Paul's baffled by it. He doesn't know what he's like, oh, I'm thinking, because we're always in his mind, I'm thinking I'm going to do this, but thankfully Helen.
Right. And I think the other nice piece of it is that he's not intimidated by it.
Right.
He actually feels, I think he is incredibly grateful to have her and to have her with him, knowing that he would probably not have gotten as far as he did if it wasn't for her. So in a way, I think a lot of his story is almost written as like a tribute to Helen. He obviously loves her, he respects her, and I think that's great. It's not they don't go. It's not like an enemies to lovers plot, right, where they're battling academics and then they fall for each other. No, he's just like, oh wow, she's great, she's smart, she's strong, like. Yeah. Yes, like, this is the person that I want, and I think that's great, and, refreshing even in 2021, where it doesn't even have to be a whole thing, and it's a type of, and I think I picked up a lot more on it the second time around, because again, like you said, you read for plot the first time, and characterization the second time, and I also think, being in a relationship and being married especially, I can appreciate that balance more, right? Because of the balances that you and I have. We can be very different, but that balance is what creates, a great life and a great relationship. We kind of fill in the areas that the other might be lacking in, and that's good, right? Because no one person is one thing, and I think that's very clear with Helen and Paul as well. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I certainly enjoyed our reread.
Yes, I did too. Did too. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to read next.
I know. I'm excited.
Okay.
I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm just excited. We always have great discussions around it. So.
I know. So thank you. Thanks for letting me join one of your videos.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
So let us know if you've read it. I'll throw some books in the description box that I can, obviously Dracula by Bram Stoker. With Istanbul, I was thinking of the final volume of John Julius Norwich's History of Byzantium, Decline and Fall, where it talks specifically about the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople, and so that was, and also has like the Byzantines for a time were ruling over Bulgaria, so that was like that felt relevant.
This is definitely the kind of book that will get you down a Wikipedia hole if you're not careful, and especially if your knowledge of history is not as strong as Jack's is. So there'll be times where I'm reading and then all of a sudden I find myself for an hour just scrolling around about Byzantium and the history, and then realizing Buda and Pest are like kind of two cities separated by a river.
Right?
Yeah. So that was news to me. I'm not ashamed to admit, and it makes me want to go there even more.
Absolutely.
So maybe we can do our own little, tracing of the historian through Eastern Europe one day.
I'm game for it.
All right, we'll do it.
All right.
All right.
Well, let us know what you think. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.